This week on Q&A, television personality Alyona Minkovski, host of The Alyona Show, seen on RT, a Russian government-funded television station streaming live and broadcasting in over 100 countries worldwide.
Alyona Minkovski, what is The Alyona Show?
The Alona Show, at this point, has almost become an extension of myself, whereas at first it was a project and it was go make a TV show. Now it really has become, I think, The Alona Show, and that it embodies my passions, the things that I really feel deserve to be top news in the world, especially in the U.S. too, because we do focus on domestic politics, on U.S. politics, and so the primary goal is to offer an alternative to the mainstream media, because there's just so much garbage out there that you want somebody who can weed through it, who's not just going to go through the basic DC back and forth talk that you have about who said what in terms of Eric Cantor and John Boehner. There are larger stories out there, including the numerous wars that our country is involved in, including the economic situation. And I think that people want somebody who's willing to actually talk about that in a big picture, to connect the dots. And I'm hoping that I'm providing that for people, and especially for a younger audience. I think The Alyona Show is the new generation of what news is, in the sense that it's not dry, it's not stodgy, it's witty, it's sarcastic, and so you're entertained, but you're also being informed and you're learning something. You're not being dumbed down the way that I think that a lot of the other news does.
Okay, where can I see it?
Well, you can watch RT. We are on cable in almost every major city in the U.S. I know that we're on cable in New York, in D.C., in Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and I believe maybe North or South Carolina. Something like 20 to 22 million households now within the U.S. can access RT on cable. Around the world, we're on satellite. You can always watch us online. The Alyona Show has its own YouTube channel. You can go to the RT.com website, and we live stream everything. So there are a lot of options out there if you want to find it.
How long have you been doing it?
The show itself, or working at RT?
Either one.
I've been working at RT for about 2.5 years. The show, we went live, I think it was January 21st of last year. So it's been about 1.5 years. And prior to that, we had a few months, about 2.5 months, where it was in an experimental phase. We were taping the show. It was 30 minutes. We did it twice a week. Then we started 3 times a week. Then it went to 5 days a week. And then boom, we started going live for an hour every day.
We have some tape of you on that first show.
Oh,
That's just
so embarrassing.
It's short. It's only 40 seconds. Let's watch.
Welcome to The Alyona Show. I'm Alyona Minkovski, and this is episode 1 of a brand spanking new experience coming straight out of Washington, D.C. Now, I'm not from here myself. I came out from California to really take a fresh glance at the Beltway politics, to really see how things work around here and try to stir it up a little bit, because there's so much that goes on that nobody else bothers to share. So I'm here to find that and to give you something different. So if you're sick of the same old stories, if you're sick of dancing around all of the real issues, then The Alyona Show is the place for you.
You know, in one of the blogs a couple of months ago, you wrote this, so we'll get into some of your background. There are those in this world who can't look past the name and funding of where I work and assume that I'm a Russian propagandist who gets my script straight from the Kremlin only after I finish our obligatory morning session of worshiping a bare-chested picture of Putin.
Yes,
how
yes.
often do you get that? And explain, RT used to stand for Russia Today. How does that network work?
I can't say that. I mean, that when I was blogging, there was guest blogging, Radley Balco's blog, The Agitator. And so that was my little introduction there, where I decided to play with it, to make fun of some of the critique that we get. Because yes, RT stands for Russia Today. Now we just go by RT. It's cleaner, it's more simple. And, for me, part of that is just being able to laugh at that critique, because I don't feel like it's really a valid one. I do believe that people are afraid when they see somebody else, and I think, we've seen this from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who has mentioned RT. We've seen this from the Broadcasting Board of Governors, as they really see this as a competition. And they're saying that we're losing to the Russians, and they can't believe that it's happening, on their own turf here in the U.S. But for me, I'm an American. So anytime I hear that criticism that I somehow am anti-American and I work for a propaganda machine that works against this government, I have to laugh at it because otherwise it really gets my blood boiling, because I am an American. I love this country, and I feel that it's my duty, I would even go as far as calling it my patriotic duty, to really report on what's happening here, on the real issues that I feel like our mainstream media really is happy to close their eyes to, is really happy to try to blind the eyes of the masses as well, because I feel like they have become this body that works for the government. They're a lapdog of the government instead of a watchdog of the government these days. So somebody's got to do it. And it's embarrassing, I think, for U.S. media if RT is doing a much better job at exposing some of the hypocrisy and the corruption and the wrongdoing that's going on here.
Who owns RT?
RT is publicly funded, so it's funded by the Russian government.
Why do they do it, do you know?
You would have to ask them.
And why? How did you get involved in it?
I was in Moscow one summer. I have a lot of family that still lives in Moscow, and so I had been working there and had been introduced to RT, and at that point I was still in college, still thinking of what I might do after I graduate, and had always been interested in journalism and decided to intern at the channel and just check it out.
But where were you in college at the time?
I was going to UC Santa Cruz. UC Santa Cruz, I'm a banana slug. That's a school in Northern California, which is has a very mellow, hippie vibe, I guess you could say, and which really made me realize that I lived in another world growing up when I came here to Washington, D.C. I never realized that I would be such a uber crazy lefty until I moved here, because I thought that that was absolutely normal. But so at that point, I interned at RT. I was really interested in what they were doing, but all of their offices were still in Russia, and I wasn't prepared to move back there. And then once I did graduate from university, they had already opened up offices here, and so I decided to contact them, see if they are interested, if they need people, and from there it just kind of, it all went the usual route: emails, phone calls, interviews, and it happened.
What did you major in?
I majored in political science, although at Santa Cruz, because they like to be different, they just called it politics. And I minored in film and digital media.
You were born, though, in Moscow.
I was born in Moscow, and I moved to the States when I was 4.
And you have a kind of a famous mother.
I do have kind of a famous mother, that's right. She is a 3-time Olympic gold medalist. She was a pair skater, and it's something that is, brings a lot of joy to my heart. Of course, it's something that I'm very proud of. But both my parents are incredible people. My mother was a figure skater. She now is actually involved in politics in Russia. She's now in the Duma. My father is an entrepreneur. He was a trained architect, but he's done everything from that design to film production as well. So all in all, they're both incredibly inspiring people that have helped me every step of the way become who I am.
So she's a part of the Russian legislature.
She is now, yes. She's a part of the Duma.
How did you get to the States, and what year did you come here, and why?
We came in 1990, and my mother at that point was done figure skating, but she was coaching, and so we moved to Lake Arrowhead, California, which was a tiny town in the mountains, but where they happened to have an international training center where Michelle Kwan, people like that skated. Carlo Fassi coached there, so it was this small little nook in Southern California where you just had an immense amount of talent. But I think that my father always wanted to move to the States, so that was obviously a decision I didn't have any part of. I was 4 years old, but I couldn't be happier that they made it.
And how would you define your politics? You are an American citizen.
Yes.
And how would you define your politics?
Well, I guess, I would call myself liberal, and I have absolutely no problem saying that. And I am a registered Democrat. I voted Democratic in the last election, but I feel like the longer that I've been here in Washington, the more disenchanted I am with the political system and with both parties. And that's something that we really try to do on the show, too, is step above that fray, because I feel like there's such an effort in this country by politicians, by the media as well, to convince people that we're so polarized, that we're so different, and we can never see eye to eye. But there's so much that Americans have in common with each other, but they're being distracted by, you could say, wedge issues, things like abortion or gay marriage, which, I mean, both to me are incredibly important issues. To me, the gay marriage and gay rights that's like the civil rights fight of my generation, I think you could say. So they definitely are important issues. But I think that it's a way to divide people, to try to distract them so they don't realize that this is becoming a corporate state, that both parties no longer work for the people, but both Republicans and Democrats are slaves to a military-industrial complex, or slaves to Wall Street, or slaves to corporations that really control everything and have such a strong and very expensive grasp on it.
If you live in Washington, and I do, in this area, you can watch Russia Today, RT, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Your program every night, 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 1 hour.
Yes.
Is it hard to do a 1 hour television show every day?
It's hard in the sense that, there are some days when I don't want to be on TV. There are some days when you just don't feel like having to go on TV and put on a show for people. And it's a lot of stress because no matter what happens, you come in that morning and you know that I have to fill an hour of TV and it has to start at 6 p.m. and there are no ways around it. That's what happens when you do a live program, is you just have to roll with the punches and see what happens. But I really love what I do. I love the team that I work with. And so we do come in excited every day, thinking of what the material is that we're going to put together, what we're going to put out there. And of course, always hoping that the people are going to notice because we're doing it better than the other stations out there.
Let's watch you and a little comment on Sarah Palin.
Let's do it. Now, you know what I really love about this? Is you'll see pundits, anchors, or hosts on the cable networks all talk about how Sarah Palin is such a huge distraction, how it's just so unfair that the real presidential candidates out there have their stars dimmed by such a money-grubbing media whore. Okay, maybe they don't use those exact words, but I will. Anyway, the point is that it's the weakest and lamest excuse for analysis that I've ever seen. Here's an idea. You don't have to cover her if you don't want to. And then you can focus on those other supposed real candidates. And I know, it's really some groundbreaking logic that I'm bestowing upon you, so I'll give it a little time to sink in. But when you wake up from your Sarah Palin wet dream, let's remember that there's that whole economic crisis in this country. There's a recession, high unemployment, a demolished housing market. How about the fact that we are out of money?
Money-grubbing media whore.
Yeah, you had to get my foul-mouthed ways there, didn't you?
Well, no, would you hear that on an American
No, I don't
network?
think you would hear that. I'll tell you where I think you could hear that, which is a place where I draw some inspiration from, is I think that you would hear that from Jon Stewart. And I think you would hear that from Stephen Colbert. And I think that those are the venues where people are really flocking to because you want somebody who has an edge to them to talk about the news. And especially if you're going to make fun of the news and how seriously they try to take themselves, then it's fine to be, I think, a little crass sometimes. Satire goes a long way. Like I said, wit goes a long way. And I especially think that that's what younger people want. And because it's no longer, it's not the Katie Courics, I'm sorry, but people like her that get these multi-million-dollar contracts to host the evening news, but nobody gathers around the TV every night with their families anymore to watch the evening news. And if they do, it's definitely not my generation. I think you can blame some of that on the fact that, well, this is a different world. We have DVR. Everyone's lives are so much more hectic and so much busier, and you have the internet. You can watch whenever it's convenient for you. But I also think people are tired of it. And let me go back to a point that I was making earlier there, is that I do feel like there is this deliberate effort to dumb television down for the audiences. And I don't think that that's what they want. And I think that they want to be spoken to like they're a worthy audience, like they're on the same intellectual level as you. And that's why wit and satire is funny, because they feel like they're being challenged as well as entertained, as well as they're learning something, rather than just hearing this mind-boggling Casey Anthony, yada, 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 go on and on and on.
Tool time. What is Tool Time, and was that your name for it?
Tool Time. Well, I have to admit, I don't know if I'm going to get sued for this or something, but I definitely watched. What was the show with Tim Allen when I was a kid? I've completely forgotten about it now. But they had a fake show called Tool Time. He and his partner, and so that name just kind of rung a bell when we were trying to think of a segment that we could brand, that we knew we could do every single day, because there's always going to be someone new to make fun of because of a gaffe that they made or because of a stance that they took that's completely hypocritical. And so Tool Time has become a treasured favorite, I think, of the Alyona Show, because it's really a moment where we get to have fun. And there's a lot of people out there that stick their foot in their mouth, and thanks to the fact that everything is recorded these days, you can always find a good clip of it too.
How long do you make that?
How long is the Tool Time segment of the show? It varies, but maybe between 2.5 to 4 minutes every day.
Well, here's a minute of one of your Tool Times.
Let's take a look at this info that we found today. See, for all of 2010, members of the House were only in session for 121 days, and the Senate, 159 days. That's less than half the year. So far this year, and by the way, this year will be the half over by tomorrow, the House has worked 75 days and the Senate only 76. So where can I sign up for this job? You make around $170,000 a year. You only have to come to the office half the time. Now, to illustrate my point even more, Senate was scheduled to be out of session next week and then go on recess for an entire month starting August 6th. And the House of Representatives has been off 8 weeks already this year, including this week. Did you get 8 weeks of vacation so far this year? Because I sure didn't. So how in the hell is Washington supposed to solve any problems when nobody works? That's why we haven't passed a budget in so long. That's why we are giving the 112th U.S. Congress our Tool Time Award for being absolutely useless.
Some would say that we're better off as a country if they're not in session.
And they would say that, why? Because then they're just engaged in too much of politics?
Or spending too much money.
Well, of course, spending money is their job, and I'm definitely in agreement that Congress spends a little too much money. But as long as you're here, then at least do something. The way that they're really spending a lot of money is when they sit around and they don't actually pass any legislation, because it's all about grandstanding and refusing to compromise and pretending like you have some serious principles, but then you go through and have backdoor meetings and you maybe make some deals here and there, but then you go back out to the public and you pretend like you're still standing your ground, whereas really you're making a deal that completely goes against, like I said, what those principles are. It's just so much back and forth, and nothing is getting done in this country. And again, I feel like a lot of that is an act. And that's when it really becomes a waste of money. It becomes completely unfair to Americans, because we voted these people into office. We voted for you to represent our interests, and they're not doing that. They're not working all that long, and whenever they are home, maybe they meet with a few constituents, but it's what they do here in Washington that really matters, because this is where the deals are made. This is where the legislation is written, where it's signed, where it's voted on. This is the center of power. And if they're just sitting around behind closed doors, like I say, collecting money from lobbyists and making all these backhanded deals, but then coming out and giving a lovely speech to the public, pretending that they're still on their side, you got to call them out for it.
Now, you said early in our discussion that this show is really for younger people, or at least you think about it. Can I guess that you're in your 20s? Is that fair?
I'll even let you in on even more of a secret. I'm 25.
Are you the youngest person to do a national television show then?
I don't even know. I've actually never looked into it. Have you?
No, but I was just thinking here, trying to think of others. I mean, Rachel Maddow's only in her early 30s, I believe. But I don't know of anybody that's at your age. And you do give your opinions on purpose. I mean, that's all part of the plan.
Yes, it's all part of the plan. I don't pretend like our show is a straight hour of news by any means. It's called The Alyona Show. It's a personality-centric show. And while I do feel that we're reporting on stories, what I do offer is analysis. So it is my opinion that's interjected in there, and I don't mask that at all.
Go back to where you learned what you think. I mean, where did it start for you? When did you get active?
Where I learned what I think. I think it's something that develops your whole life.
But when did it start, do you think, for you?
In terms of being politically
Being
engaged.
politically aware, and who influenced you?
You know, I have to say that I traveled all my life. Thanks to my family, I have seen a lot of the world, and since a very early age.
Give us an idea.
And that's something. You know, I've maybe visited 20 or so countries. When I was younger, we were going all over Europe. I've been to a million island countries. I've been to Japan. I've been to Brazil, Argentina.
Is this because your mom was a
Uruguay.
skater?
This is both traveling with my mother and traveling with my father, who loves to travel and was always trying to open my eyes to the world. And so that, I think, first just started affecting me. I studied abroad, and I lived in Barcelona for 4 months while I was in university. I lived in Florence for 4 months. That really starts to hit you when you see a different world out there, when you start talking to people in other countries and you realize their perceptions matter. And you start to think of the way that they really see your country, the way that they start to see America, the way they see politics in general, and the entire dynamics of the world. And so I think that really wakes you up and makes you start to be curious about it. Also, you know, for my generation, I was 14 years old on 9/11. I was in boarding school, and that was a really odd moment for me, because even though I wouldn't call myself as someone who had been sheltered or naive, I didn't know what terrorism was. I had no idea. I didn't know what Al-Qaeda or the Taliban were, and suddenly we're fighting wars on behalf of this country to fight this giant threat. And so I've grown up in this society where we're always at war, and there's always this supposed fear of terrorism, and I just don't think that it's right. I think that young people need to be shaken out of that, because it's not normal to be at constant war. That is not a way to conduct your affairs. That's not a way to try to be a world leader. And I think that there are a lot of people at my age that just haven't really known it to be any different. And so you need to start realizing that these things can change, that you need to stand up and you need to speak out against it and go out and protest and write your Congress members and do whatever it takes. But this can stop. America doesn't have to be on this constant spiral where we are using our counterterrorism policies and strategies worldwide.
Russia Today, RT, is seen around the world.
Yes.
Is your program.
Yes, it is.
So in other words, when you do your program live at 6 o'clock, the network around the world runs it.
My program runs live from 6 to 7 p.m. and we repeat, like you said, at 10 p.m. And it's that 10 p.m. repeat that goes live. So, for example, I know that it's on at 7 o'clock in the morning in Moscow, because that's where I have some family members. So they'll call me.
In Moscow? Do they translate?
No, it's still all in English. The channel is, because it's meant for an international audience, it's meant for the entire world to see. It's in English, just the way the BBC or Al Jazeera English is, because that is the dominant language for now.
Where does RT have studios in the world?
RT has, we have a studio here in Washington, in New York, in Miami, in Los Angeles. We have our studio in Moscow. There are a few small bureaus in Tbilisi, in Georgia. In London, we have a reporter as well. And in Ukraine, I know that we have a reporter too, and in India. There might be a few that I'm missing too, because there are also RT Spanish and there's RT Arabic.
How much reaction do you personally get from doing this show?
From who?
Just around the world. I mean, how do you know anybody's watching?
That's a very good question, because sometimes you start to wonder, right? You're wondering how many people are really watching. First of all, we get a lot of reaction from people online. A lot of our audience comes from YouTube because of the fact that it's broadcast worldwide, and because it's much more convenient. A lot of people do indeed watch online. On Facebook, I get a million messages from people all the time that are from all over the world, and that makes me feel good, because in one day I'll get a message from somebody in India and somebody in Australia and somebody in London. People contact us on Twitter all the time, so now we have a dialogue going constantly, and so we know that there are other people that are clued in, that are plugged in to, let's face it, these days you have to constantly be plugged in. You have to be following the news every second, because it's developing every single second on Twitter, and you always have to be watching, and our audience is too, because they're always responding to us.
So what about reaction from people that watch it just say in the Washington area. I mean, if you're on cable here, or you can get it over the air, but most people get it on cable, you're on there with 9 other international networks, you know, channel 280 all the way up to what is it? No, it's 271. I think.
We're
up to
274, but yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere in that area, there's a number of
Do you
international
get reaction
networks.
here in town?
Yes, get a lot of reaction here in town.
Anybody complain about your positions on things?
Can you complain, or,
No,
or
I
do
say,
they?
do they? Yeah.
Well, sure. I mean, it depends on who it is and what they're. Some people, the whole point is I bring them on my show so they can complain about my position on things, so we can have a good, honest debate about it, and maybe yell at each other for a few minutes, and then see if anybody wins here. But I think that the fact that people want to come on our show is a testament to the fact that they're paying attention, that they're interested, that we have, we have members of Congress like Dennis Kucinich, Representative Keith Ellison was just on the show the other day. Ron Paul talks to our channel often. That to me is a testament that people in Washington are starting to pay attention. Like I said, Hillary Clinton has mentioned it. The Broadcasting Board of Governors have mentioned it. I think we're definitely on the radar here.
And you have a fellow on there named Tom Hartman.
Tom Hartman also does a program, yes.
American, who used to be in Oregon. He's now moved in this area. I guess he's based here now. Does he do the show here?
Yes, he does the show here. He still does a radio show, which amazes me how he fits all of that into one day. But he still does a radio show every day, and also a 1-hour TV show on the channel.
And something called Crosstalk with Peter Lavelle?
Peter Lavelle is he's in Moscow.
But he's an American.
Peter Lavelle is an American. Yeah, I've never met him. So I don't know too much about him, but he lives in Moscow.
And
that's
what's
where he
the
hosts
rest
show
of the
from.
day on RT? What kind of things can people see?
Well, it depends. Where our bureau is here now in Washington, D.C. is we are RT America. So we focus on U.S. politics, on domestic politics. And in Moscow, that's RT International. And so they switch off because Moscow is running 24 hours a day, and our newscast doesn't start here until 4 p.m. And it runs until 8:30 p.m., at which point after that, my show and Tom Hartman's show repeat. So you can watch us specifically in the evening, but at any other time, you'll see RT International on.
Well, you're 25 years old, and you've now done this for 2 years.
Don't keep repeating it, Brian. Come on.
Well, the reason I do is that how did they know, had you done television before this?
No.
How did they know that you could do this? How did they test you?
That's a good question. I'm very thankful that they decided to test me by giving me a show and putting so much responsibility in my hands and really taking a chance on me. But prior to hosting the show, I had been a correspondent for the channel for a couple of months. So I was already doing live hits. I was traveling and doing stories. But also we did a pilot because I think that people saw that maybe I have a little more to offer than just going out and reporting straight stories, because I love the human interaction. I love interviewing people. I also obviously love to speak my mind and get deeper into those issues. And so I think that my boss and the superiors at my channel really saw something in me that they thought maybe people would like, maybe people would relate to, and that I guess I could carry it.
So who runs the whole shebang out of Moscow?
Who runs the whole shebang
Yeah.
out of Moscow? We have a chief, Margarita Simonyan. She runs the entire operation here. We also have my boss who runs our editorial side in Washington, D.C., but I can't say that I have a whole lot of contact with
But I
with
see a lot of women.
You see a lot of women
A lot
on
of
the
younger
channel.
people. A lot of younger people.
That
on the
the
channel.
entire channel has a lot of younger people on it, and I think that they're really smart in doing that. I think that they've brought in a lot of people with fresh ideas that, like I said, I know that my audience isn't all young people. I'm not only directing my show towards a younger audience. I know that there's an older audience out there, and you told me yourself that you watch the show.
I was gonna say, if
so-
I watch, it's not a young audience only.
so that's a pleasure too. But I think that the whole point is that we're willing to step outside the box. We're willing to try something different, to figure out how to make TV news exciting and entertaining and informative again, rather than, I'm sorry, but like I said, the garbage that really it's dwindled down to be.
Here's some more of your show where you're talking about Afghanistan.
Welcome to tonight's Fireside Fridays with your host, Alyona Minkovski.
While President Obama is meeting with world leaders in Portugal discussing the war in Afghanistan,
Well, the U.S. military is deploying a company of M1 Abrams tanks to Marines stationed in the northern Helmand province. Now, let's get one thing clear first. These aren't just any tanks. No, these things are monstrosities. They each weigh 68 tons. They're propelled by a jet engine, and they're equipped with 30-year-old precision firepower. So why in a mountainous, dusty country like Afghanistan would you try to have big tanks rolling around? Well, if you listen to military officials, they'll tell you that it's simple. Awe, shock, and firepower. It's all part of the campaign to show how strongly they've been beefing up military operations. And not the unconventional counterinsurgency type. No, I'm talking very conventional warfare. Bomb and kill, shock and awe. Forget about hearts and minds.
You call that segment Fireside Fridays. What's that about?
Fireside Fridays is my chance. Every Friday I'll pick something that we may have been reporting throughout the week, and maybe I want to wrap up on it, or it's just something where I want to take out a personal moment just between myself and the audience without a guest, where I want to highlight an issue that I feel really passionately about, and it's supposed to be a little bit more of this warm, fuzzy setting. We realize that it's cheesy. We have a fake fireplace.
Well, that wasn't real.
But we have fun with it, and it's something that I think a lot about every week. I take my time writing it because it's really something, like I said, that I feel passionately about. And the war in Afghanistan, if you watch the program, you'll notice is something that we cover constantly.
Well, let's do another clip on Afghanistan. And you referred to the Soviets not winning there also.
Mm-hmm. So just how long will this war last? Obama says that he's going to start troop reduction next year. But will we really be able to fulfill that promise? I mean, we're about to launch our largest offensive this summer. We're going to have more than 100,000 troops in the country, which, by the way, is the largest amount the Soviets had, and we know that they didn't win. And now McChrystal is calling the offensive in Kandahar a process rather than an operation, which rightly so recognizes that it's not a quick in and out. But don't you think we should have realized that a long time ago? In terms of this war as a whole, I mean, my question here is very simple. Do we have a plan for winning in Afghanistan or for getting out safely? Or maybe it's time for the White House and the Pentagon to realize that this is a lost war and that we need to bring all the troops home.
How much of this is dictated to you from Moscow?
None of it.
How much of this is something that you don't want to say that you're told to say from here from somebody that works at RT?
None of it.
So what is the purpose, from what you know, of RT being around the world? What do they want to get out? What does the country of Russia want to get out of this?
Like I said, Brian, I can't necessarily answer that question on behalf of the entire country of Russia, but I do think that there is a vested interest for any country to be able to show that there isn't there doesn't need to be a hegemony when it comes to looking at the world, and there's not only a Western viewpoint or only an Eastern viewpoint.
Well, let me interrupt to ask you, is it like the Voice of America?
Yeah, you can compare it to Voice of America, you can compare it to BBC, like I said, you can compare it to Al Jazeera English, to channels like that.
And can the Voice of America be seen in Russia? Or listened to in Russia?
I think so. I'm pretty sure it can, but to be honest, I don't know because I haven't watched it there.
How many folks do you need in Washington to do the job you're doing? In other words, first on your show and then the whole bureau. How big is it?
My show, we have about 7 people that are our full-time staff in terms of we come in every morning, we have our editorial meeting that we decide on ourselves, that nobody dictates to us. It's really a very organic process, and that we come in, we talk about what we saw in the news, what stories we saw online, we all check our favorite blogs, and then we just decide what we think is going to be good and what's going to round out the show that day. And we also have then, of course, some great technical crew that starts beefing up the numbers. And overall, I think there are about 65 to 70 people that work out of the bureau in DC now, which is a big change because when I first started working at RT, there was 7 of us total.
And in Russia, under what umbrella is it in? I read somewhere that the Novosti has something that is Novosti the overall umbrella organization that RT fits under?
I'm not good with all of those details in terms of what umbrella we're under there in Moscow. We're in the same building, but Moscow has a really big operation there. They're probably 10 times bigger than we are here in DC.
So you said earlier that there is a network in Russian and in Arabic?
They have RT Arabic and they have RT Spanish, which launched recently.
Spanish. What languages do you speak?
I speak English and I speak Russian. My Spanish used to be good at one point, but you know what? Without practice, it really has faded, which is embarrassing for me to admit, because Spanish growing up in California, especially, that's something that I studied in school. It seems natural. I studied abroad in Barcelona, and I really took a liking to it, but without practice, everything starts to fade. I just think I need to practice again.
Where did you learn your Russian?
I learned my Russian not in school. I never studied it because I moved here when I was 4, and since preschool I've been in school in the U.S. So just conversationally, just through speaking with my family.
And how much time do you spend in Russia, or have you spent over the years? And your mom lives there full time?
Yes, my mother lives there, my brother lives there, my grandmother lives there. So I used to go back probably once or twice a year when I was in school, when you have set breaks. It's a little easier when you have vacations like that. And now I haven't been in almost 2 years, unfortunately, because I definitely, would love to see my brother and my niece and my mother and my grandmother, but I find it harder and harder to do when you're working full time.
Did your brother grow up here?
My brother was 11 years old when we moved to the States. He's 7 years older than me. And he lived in the U.S. for about 10 years, and then he moved back.
What got your mother interested in being a part of the legislature, the Duma?
You're going to have to ask her that question yourself, because I was surprised. I knew my mother as an athlete and as a figure skater all my life, and one day she just told me, I'm going into politics.
What area does she represent?
She represents Omsk, which is in Siberia. But she lives full-time in Moscow, but she's flying back and forth between Omsk all the time.
We've been talking about your mother, and we do have a clip of you interviewing her.
In Vancouver.
And before we go there, what are the circumstances of this interview?
The circumstances were that the Olympics were going on. My mother was there, and we thought it would be a great opportunity and a fun opportunity, and we were granted it to be able to fly me out there so I could interview my mom on the show.
And what is her name?
Her name is Irina Rodnina.
Let's watch.
Okay. Though I am an American citizen, I was born in Russia, and I have to tell you that the Olympic Games do hold a very special place in my heart because of the person that I am now joined with sitting next to me. This is 3-time Olympic figure skating champion, Irina Rodnina, and also I'm very, very proud to say she is my mother. Now, Irina, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Alyona.
So first, I want to get your impression of these Winter Games here in Vancouver so far.
It's for me not first Olympic Games, and of course everybody waiting these Olympic Games. Weather finally, like you tell, it's now very good. Maybe results for Russian team is not so good. I think it's the worst Olympic Games for Russia team, and especially in figure skating.
Did you ever know your mother to be political when she was in?
No. Not really. My mother has always been a very opinionated woman. Believe me, she doesn't hold back when she's got something to say. But I never really thought of her as anybody who was political. But I think she's doing a great job. From the stories that I hear, from the programs that she develops, that will be new teams for children or new sports programs for orphans, and I think she's doing a great job.
Well, I asked you earlier where you think you got your own views. How much did her views impact you when you were growing up?
I can't say that my mother and I spoke a lot about politics growing up. So they will tell you statistically that often your political views and your ideology will resemble that of your parents. And I can't necessarily say that that's true for me with either my mother or my father. My father is more conservative than I am, and sometimes we get in our own heated debates. So I really think that it was my education, it was the people that I was surrounded with, living in California. I think that there is a certain mentality to living in that state. And I think that really did influence me a lot.
UC Santa Cruz is not exactly a conservative place.
UC Santa Cruz is not a conservative place by any means.
What's the happy hour segment on the Alona Show?
The happy hour segment, it's fairly new. I think we've been doing it for a couple of months now. And we decided that it would be fun to round out the show with, there's always certain stories that don't necessarily, they're not worthy of an entire interview and an entire discussion, and they may be a little more playful and a little more fun. And there are some people that you just love talking about that kind of stuff with, because you think of the stories that at the end of the day people go home from, or not go home from work, but they might leave work, they might go to the bar, go to happy hour, and what do they want to share with their friends? What do they want to discuss that does have some political implication in it? And that's where happy hour really was born from. And it's a little fun. It's a little bit of unwinding for me at the end of the show too, because I don't know, people always tell me that maybe I'm a little more serious in the beginning because it'll be a topic, like I said, it'll be something about the war in Afghanistan and the new strategy and what the president said that day, which I just get so wrapped up in. And so it's nice to let loose at the end of the hour and have a little fun and laugh about it.
Here's a clip where you're talking about a little bit about Glenn Beck.
Okay, it's time for happy hour tonight, and joining me this evening is RT producer Jenny Churchill and JP Frere, senior communications strategist at New Media Strategies. You have your own olives. Keep your hands out, JP.
One or more.
Jesus Christ. Okay, so today is the end of an era, and I couldn't be more excited, but let me show you who I'm talking about.
Hello, America. I'm TV and radio's Glenn Beck.
There is a strange alliance between the left and the Islamicists that we're seeing. I think it's all part of the coming insurrection.
The progressives want to do, in the first place, collapse the system and start all over again. Do you know how much money Rupert Murdoch is, he's got all these things going on? You think he's going to let a guy at 5 o'clock say a bunch of stuff, put this together, it's completely wrong, and stay on the network? I feel like
Yeah, that's exactly what I think, is that he's going to let you go out there, say a bunch of things that are completely wrong, and stay on the network. We already did a whole story about Roger Ailes and how we started planning this way back in the Nixon days. But are you as happy to see Glenn Beck go as I am, or are you sad inside?
Glenn Beck.
Glenn Beck holds a special place in my heart.
Why is that? Because we have some other clips we're going to
Yes, Glenn Beck has, believe me, provided our show with a lot of material. And the funny thing is, now I don't even really talk about Glenn Beck anymore, because not only is his program ended on Fox News, but I feel like his influence has really faded a lot too. And for a while there, though, Glenn Beck was booming. His ratings were high, and anytime I watch this man, this is what's wrong to me. This is one factor of what's wrong with U.S. media is there's the Fox News model, and then there's the everybody else model. On the Fox News model, what they've managed to do is to whip people up into a frenzy. They work on fear, and they work on paranoia, and you have a man like Glenn Beck out there who, and I do think that people are confused and probably think that he's telling you news, when really he's acting like this weird, televangelist, but he's just telling you that at all times there is a conspiracy to take this world down, whether it be the liberals that are working with the communists, that are also working with the Muslim caliphate, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's such nonsense. And I think he really scares people. He really influenced people for a while, and Americans believed him. And I was here when he had his Restoring Honor rally on the Mall, and I just had this really overwhelming feeling where I was, it almost brought tears to my eyes, because there were so many people coming here, and I couldn't believe that so many people are inspired by this man that just wants to scare them and peddle gold to them and peddle food shortage kits to them. He's an actor. He's an actor, and people believe in what it is that he's trying to sell, and it's ludicrous to me, and that's why I think people like Glenn Beck need to be criticized.
Speaking of actors, let's watch a little bit of you.
People, we are in trouble. We are in trouble because a big red beast known as China, well, it's creeping. It's inching towards us. I can feel it in my bones, and I can tell you that, it doesn't feel right. No, it doesn't feel right that America's power, our sovereignty, is being threatened by the East, by that dragon that's just waiting to breathe fire on the world as we know it. They say they're the People's Republic. A People's Republic? I think you and I both know that that means they're communist.
What are you doing there?
That was last Halloween, and we decided it's Halloween. Why not dress up and do the entire show as somebody else? And for a second, I think Sarah Palin may have come to mind, and then we decided, no, it's got to be Glenn Beck. And so that was probably the most exhausting hour of my life. I was just telling your staff before we began, because it's one thing to go on TV and be myself every day for an hour. It's another thing to go on TV and just act like somebody else. That took a lot of energy, I've got to admit, but it was fun. It was fun to do. But like I said, I didn't even bother revisiting that for the end of Glenn Beck's reign, I guess you could say, at Fox News, because at that point I already felt like his influence had died down and good.
Here's a little bit more of you doing this.
Jon Stewart is holding a rally this weekend in Washington, D.C. And though many people fail to see it for what it really is, I'm here to stand up and tell you, my viewers, the truth about it. This rally is nothing but a serious ploy, a frightening ploy, to get voters who are too stupid to think for themselves to follow Stewart to the altar for sacrifice on Tuesday. He wants voters to laugh their way to the booths, thinking about all the poor fools, you and me, that they'll be taking advantage of if they keep the Democrats in power. They're following a man who is nothing more than a political cartoon. So I guess I'll end this by saying that Benjamin Franklin, who actually brought us the very first political cartoon, would be weeping if he saw the atrocity on the Mall this weekend.
Why do you think he was so successful?
Glenn Beck?
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is a void right now that needs to be filled when it comes to television news and when it comes to media and information. I think people are still hungry for it, but there obviously are a lot of fears that are very easy to play upon in American society right now, be it the xenophobia with when we deal with immigration, or of course xenophobia when it comes to Islamophobia as well, because of 9/11 and because of all the uncertainty with the economy. And I do think that people, they want somebody that they can relate to, that they can listen to. And like I said, I think he pulled the right strings and he learned how to play upon those fears. And that's one model that is successful. Whereas the rest of the media, you see that they're struggling. CNN is changing their lineup and trying new shows left and right, and none of that is working for them. And like I said, you have the other networks that are hiring people like Katie Couric and paying them millions to try to get them to fill that evening time slot and firing other people because of it, and that is failing for them. And that's because there's either a void in the sense that regular mainstream news isn't news anymore. You don't learn anything from it. If you want to learn something, you go online and you can read all of the facts. You can read all of the details, be it on an actual newspaper website or just be it on some type of a blog. But other than that, it's just boring because it's mindless. And so then you have Fox News, which knows how to whip people up and play upon their emotions. And I think that's where my show is trying to really to find a new niche for people. And that same niche, like I said, that I think that Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert managed to fill for people that they want a logical argument. They don't need to be scared all the time. They know what's going on, but they want it to be funny. They want it to be sarcastic. They want you to talk to them, and they want you to talk to them about issues that actually matter to people these days. I'm sorry, but the Cold War is long over. For my generation, that doesn't matter. We're not afraid of communism anymore. Quite the opposite. We're afraid of the fact that we have this massive security state and intelligence state that's growing, that is, we're constantly under surveillance. Privacy is something that I think is incredibly important for my generation, for any generation, but just as long as we carry on into the future, because technology plays such a large role in our lives. And I think that's why it's so interesting to watch all the developments and to monitor things like the Protect IP Act. And that's why I go to blogs like Tech Dirt and I speak with people like Julian Sanchez from the Cato Institute, because these are the people that are really specializing in this type of privacy, security information that is affecting all of us, and we just have no idea. And I think that honestly some of our legislators don't know what they're actually writing laws about. I think it's even too complex for them to understand, which is even scarier.
You know, you've been very strong about saying you're an American, and but you work for a Russian television network, but your mom's in the Duma. Did she ever Americanize when she came here? Did she become a citizen?
No, she did not.
How do you, as you look back, you know what's a lot of the publicity that Mr. Putin gets in this country, for instance, that the country is less open than it used to be and all that. How do you track all this? I mean, are you first and foremost an American through and through, a believer in American democracy, or do you wish that we did some of the things they did in Russia?
I'm an American through and through. Of course I believe in American democracy. This is the country where I was educated. This is where I grew up. This is what I know, which is why I take such a vested interest in talking about the problems, in bringing them up so that we can address them and make the country better. You know, and what I do on my show is I don't criticize the politics of other countries and what might be going on there, because I focus on America. And, you know, Russia to me is a place that I have an emotional connection with, because that's where, like I said, that's where I was born, that's where I still have family. But politically minded, I look at the U.S. and how we interact with the rest of the world.
I heard you the other night say the Washington Post, oh, how that mighty newspaper has fallen. Why did you say that?
Because it has fallen. And for starters, you know, the Washington Post and the New York Times, you could say these have been considered by many people to be the premier journalistic organizations in this country. But we've seen not only massive layoffs and a massive shrinking space, especially if you go with the Times, but we've also seen the Washington Post be embroiled in this Kaplan scandal, where you figure out that it's all a money-making scheme. And that day specifically, I can't remember exactly what it was that was on the cover of the New York Times, but I think it was Michelle Obama's burger that she ate and how many calories it had. And you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me that is the top news of the day. And I feel like if you're going to pretend to be the mighty newspaper in this nation, then you better cover. I'm happy that these newspapers worked with WikiLeaks at first, but the way that the New York Times has now turned against Julian Assange, and yet they keep writing stories based on the information that's been leaked by WikiLeaks, and they play this very cozy game with the government as well, where they will withhold information if the president asks them to. I think that all of that has to make you start questioning who they're really working for, government watchdog or government lapdog.
You can watch everything you do on RT.
Yep.
Meaning the internet, in case people can't see it. But you can also, RT has an aggressive pitch that they make that they want people in the media to use their stuff, their clips and all. Do you find people using it in our media around the country?
Yes, I don't know how aggressive their pitch is when it comes to other people.
Well, you just hear it on the air. I mean,
clips.
I picked it up. I said, you know, they encourage you to go to their website and use the material.
Because why not, right? Why not have as many people put their eyes on it and actually see it and hear it and feel it as possible? Let
me show an RT network promo. It's only 46 seconds to see the kind of thing that they tell your audience every day.
Let's not forget that we had an apartheid regime right here in America.
I think Barack Obama is beatable in 2012.
Whenever government says they're going to keep you safe, get ready, because you're going to lose your freedoms.
We never censor your opinions. That's what it said on that screen. Is that
That's
true?
right. Can't tell you I've ever censored an opinion on the show. Maybe I've brought a guest on that I know I'm going to debate, and I tell him to cut the crap, but but I don't censor opinions.
Alona, that spelling, Alyona.
Yeah.
If you were in Russia, how would that be pronounced?
It's Alyona, and people who speak English can't exactly say Alyona, and so rather than, for some reason, it's just a really horrible pain to my ears when people say Alyona when they pronounce the Y, so I've made it silent. And that was something that just happened when I was a kid.
Well, I've got a 30-second promo for you on your show. What do you think about being a personality? How's that feel to you after you've done it for a couple years?
Well, now that I feel like I've learned to grow in, of how to grow into being a personality and how to embrace it, I love it, and I feel confident because I do think that I have something to offer. I think that there's a reason that people want to watch the show. But at first, believe me, I was scared. It's a hard thing, especially when you're 23 years old, to figure out what exactly your personality is that you're going to be putting on TV every day.
Here's your promo. How long did it take you to do that?
That was, we had a crew come in from Moscow with their special fancy red cam that they had, and we really only had a couple of hours, I believe, because I was also working on the show that day, so it didn't take a whole lot of time. But that promo is funny. Ask anybody that I work with, and they'll know that I complain about it all the time, because while it's aesthetically pleasing and beautiful, my beef is always that it looks like I just walk in and say, let's do the show, as if I don't sit there and work all day preparing for it. But that's just a personal thing.
Where do you think you'll be in 10 years?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm going to see where life takes me, see where I think this career may take me. I wasn't sure for a while whether this was something I wanted to do or not. I never wanted to be on TV. Like I said, journalism had interested me when I was younger, but I wanted to write. I wanted to travel. I wanted to write about what I saw and who I spoke to when I traveled, because I never watched TV myself either. I never watched TV news. And suddenly, when I was thrown into it, I used to think that TV news was so cheesy, but then I really do feel now like there is this void that we're trying to fill, and that people can start enjoying TV again if you just have something better to offer than what's out there.
Alyona Minkovski, we are out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
For a DVD copy of this program, call 1-877-662-7726. For free transcripts or to give us your comments about this program, visit us at qna.org. Q&A programs are also available as C-SPAN podcasts.